Nelson Mandela epitomizes leadership, a new paradigm, in fact, in leadership that reminds us of those age-old values of integrity and honesty, humility, resilience, and courage, and more importantly, servanthood. That is what the name Nelson Mandela means to me. He is portrayed as the leader of note in the world. He is a person who championed the importance of education, and as a person involved in a higher education institution like the Nelson Mandela University, I think it's important to understand what he meant when he said how important education is for our country to rescue itself from the ravages of apartheid. So Nelson Mandela's name in itself means a lot to us, particularly now in our country when we have this dearth of ethical leadership. When we look at Nelson Mandela, that is the kind of model of leadership that we need. And I truly believe that the name Nelson Mandela and the reverence that goes with it needs to be pre-positioned once again in our country so that we can look at the model of behavior that is required to take a country into the next 20 years as a democracy.
The name Nelson Mandela means a fighter, integrity, the fighter for human rights and human dignity, a unifier. That's what it means to me.
Nelson Mandela was passionate about education. The strength of our democracy will ultimately rest on the quality of education in this country.
The name Nelson Mandela represents forgiveness and peace. So those are the only two words I think of when I think of Nelson Mandela.
Well, the name Nelson Mandela means a lot to me. First and for all, it means the person of integrity and a person of inclusiveness. What it actually means also is to also mean that one has to live not only for himself but also for other people, and also to live with true integrity, with live according to values of ethics as well.
The name means that you need to be inspired. You would need to want to do more than usually you would just be satisfied with. It says to me, you need to be a unifier wherever you go and focus on doing what is right, doing what is necessary to ensure that in this young democracy of us, we close the gap in terms of inequality and make sure that every child has the right and access to basic education. Because as our former president used to say, it's the one thing that makes sure that a son of a herdsman becomes the president of a country. So it really, I get goosebumps sometimes when I think about it, the responsibilities that we have because of Tata Mandela and the responsibilities he left us with.
I remember in last year, 2016, when I went to Japan, I spoke to an elderly man and I told him that I'm from South Africa. We couldn't really communicate because he spoke Japanese, I spoke English. But I mentioned the name Nelson Mandela and his face lit up. So I imagined him being really excited about the name Nelson Mandela and what it means to him in terms of a national footprint and in terms of a national brand. And so I think Madiba, in terms of that interaction that I had with him, came across as someone who was very unifying. And so I think that's what the name Madiba meant, or means rather, that Madiba or Nelson Mandela is a unifying term where two individuals who speak different languages still can resonate with one another.